Happy video day, guys, and happy Make Up Your Mind Day. Today we're going to be making up our mind on a brand new release, and this one I'm super excited for. Like, it's weird because when I first saw it, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys, I kind of went like, uh-oh, what just happened here? But and then as I started looking at it more, I was like, there's something about it that's giving me like a double take, and we have a lot to talk about. So Natasha Denona has just announced, or accidentally announced, I don't know what happened here, but all of a sudden we found out there is another palette coming out by Natasha for the holiday. A limited edition palette that Natasha Denona is releasing. So the palette's going to be called Triochrome, and it's supposed to be called that because some of the shades inside of here, I believe there's 3, hence the name, that are supposed to have a multi-chrome pigment to them, so they're going to shift colors on you because it's based off of her liquid shadows that she released, and she's creating this palette kind of around that idea. Their color story is very different, and for Natasha, it is kind of like what made me go, wow, well, that's kind of interesting, but I'm not sure how much I love this. And actually, I got a few tags on Instagram of people saying, make up your mind time. We need to see what you can find. We want to see what this palette might look like. And I started looking through my collection. Of course, I tell you guys, look through your own collection and try to swatch out a palette. You can kind of get an idea of what it's going to look like. And usually after you see what a color story is going to look like, you can have a better idea whether you think that you would use those colors or not. And then if you decide, yes, I think I will use those colors, then you can move on to looking at reviews and decide if you want to pick it up. But we got to have that first initial thought. Do we like the colors in this palette? So that is what this video is all about. We're going to swatch out what these colors are going to look like. We're going to go over the color story and kind of get an idea of the overall look of this palette to see if it is something that I think I would want to pick up. And then of course, you guys can decide on your own if it's something you would want to pick up. So I did do my Insta challenge, and a lot of you guys guessed this one right. I think you probably did because I've been saying it on Insta stories like, hey, I think I'm gonna be finding this one soon. So a lot of you guys did guess it right, but let's go ahead and let's get into it. There's a lot of shades in here, and I want to show you guys everything that I found out. So if you guys are new and you've never seen me before, I'm Christina Brooke. I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button. I do my Make Up Your Mind series every single week where we go over the brand new releases, and I try to give you guys just that second guess, that second thought before you go ahead and move on to the reviews and basically get convinced that you need this in your life. Just to remember, maybe you don't love the color story, or maybe you're like totally obsessed with it and you need it in your life right now. So let me go ahead and show you guys my results because I think the results are pretty interesting. I did use her swatches that she released. I usually wait for her to release her Insta story swatches, but in this case, I just decided to use these swatches that she released because I do know that this was being released in Europe pretty early, so I did want to get this out to you guys before everybody started to go and purchase it. I'm going to tell you guys, based off of the swatches, I do think that I was able to mimic this palette as best as I could, at least to see what it might look like. And I do have a pretty good idea of what it's going to look like. And let me just like FYI tell you guys, when I started swatching this is when I started to say, wow, like the images, it's very different looking at an image and making a decision than actually putting colors on your skin and looking at it. And I really feel like that is what made me kind of like switch my idea of what I was thinking of this palette. It really went from one extreme to another by the time I went on to the last swatch. So let me show you guys the palettes that I jumped into. I will tell you guys, based off of this color story, I don't think that there was really any palettes that had most of the shades in them. This palette is very unique. I did jump into Celestial Divinity from Pat McGrath. I did jump into the Dose of Colors Mauve Obsessions for one color. The Safari palette also gave me 1 shade. I did find 2 shades inside of the iconic New York palette from Laura Geller, which I haven't used in so long. Dose of Colors Cutting Edge gave me like 2 shades. The Sephora Pro, this is the editorial, editorial palette, gave me a couple of shades. Pumpkin Spice also gave me a couple of shades. And finally, the Neon Obsessions from Huda Beauty gave me a few shades. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's get into this. Let me show you guys the colors that I picked so that we can kind of go over what this color story is looking like. And then of course, at the end, I'm gonna be giving you guys my thoughts on the overall picture of this palette. So let's jump into the first color. So for the first color in the swatches, it does look like it's gonna be a very deep green. Oh goodness, I love deep greens. So if you go into Dose of Colors, there's this really deep green right here at the end. I love this green. I love this color green. This is like, I'm a sucker for this color of green, and Natasha Denona's formula I'm also a sucker for. So I really like this green, and I would love it in Natasha's formula. I think that this is a beautiful deepening shade. I just really like this shade for deepening out outer edges. I like it all over the lid. Like, I just feel like it's a very complementary shade. I've loved the way it looks with a bunch of different colors. So I'm so happy that this shade was in here. Honestly, if this shade would not have been here with some of the other greens that are in this palette, I may have had a different reaction, but this green does kind of tie together a lot of the looks that I can kind of conceptualize that you can make with this palette. So the next one, I actually jumped into Safari. Now this color, 100% I don't own. I jumped into this color called Stone. Now Stone, that's a creaky palette. Now Stone inside of Safari is a little bit too gray. It doesn't have the green undertone that I believe that the new palette is going to have. This one actually goes a little bit more blue. So I don't own a spot-on match for this color, and this one is actually interesting to me. Is it a color that I tend to use? Probably not. I probably would not use this. I mean, if I really think about how many times I use the color Stone in Safari, it's very seldom. I don't jump into it very often. However, considering that this one has a little bit more of a green look to it, and you have this really nice deep green deepening shade, I actually kind of think that that might look like a really cool smoky eye moment going on. And my mind has kind of shifted a little bit, like, I think that might be kind of cool. Like, I don't know, the first two shades have me interested. Like, I started off more interested than just looking at the picture. The next one is like one of her multi-chromes that is gonna shift colors on you. You guys know, I've said this before, I'm not a huge fan of those type of shades. I personally just don't like to not know where I'm going with a look and then put on a shade that shifts on me and be like, I like to stay this way so you can see a green, but if I turn this way, I don't like the way it looks. I've never loved those shades. However, it's Natasha Denona, and I'm interested in this formula. So what I did to kind of just get an idea of what it's looking like in the swatch is I jumped into Celestial Divinity, and I grabbed this green shade right here, but obviously this is just a little bit too deep. So what I did was I dipped into this really pretty yellow right here. When you mix the two together, the green actually turns a little bit more lime, which is what yellow and green do together. They turn more lime. Now this one is gonna shift. So no matter what swatch I find, depending on how you look at it, it's going to shift on you. It's interesting. I like that it has like that greeny aspect to it, because she did come out with one of the liquid shadows that had like a green look to it, and it was my favorite one of all the ones that she released. I didn't pick it up, but I hesitated. I was kind of like, maybe I should get that. And now I'm kind of happy I didn't, because it's kind of cool that this is in a powder formula and it's in a palette. The next one kind of, I mean, like, okay, so I don't dislike this color. I don't dislike it. It is a very editorial color. This is not something that I feel like a lot of people are going to be so excited to see, a lime matte green. And it is a little bit more editorial. I have it on today, the color that I found that's similar, and I put it kind of in the inside of my eye. I didn't want to do something too dramatic with this look. Of course, I always try to mimic a look that you can create using this palette by using the colors that are here. I did something a little bit on the softer side just because I wanted to see if you could create things that were a little bit more dyed down, and I do think you could. This color, what I did was I went into Sephora Pro. Sephora Pro is my go-to when it comes to like fun colors, I guess you would say, the more shocking colors. And I do have this lime green right here. Anytime I need a lime green, I jump into this Sephora Pro, because I don't have this color of like a lime in a matte formula. A lot of brands release this color as a metallic. So it's interesting to have it as a matte, because I really don't have it besides Sephora Pro. I don't love the Sephora Pro formula. I've said this a few times. I use it for the fun looks that I like to create, but I don't die over the formula. The formula is like, whatever. It works, it gets the job done. I can create some awesome looks with it, but the formula is not my favorite. Natasha Denona's formula is one of my favorites. So So the next one I went into Huda Beauty. Now this is another palette that's probably one of my least used palettes in my collection. I did purchase one of her neon palettes. If you guys have the neon green palette, you may actually find some more of the green tones. I never picked it up, but I did pick up this one. Now this palette I was so excited for when I first got it, but I never use it. Like I never use it. So this color in the swatches looks like it's a matte. But in my collection, I cannot find this color in a matte form. The only thing I was able to do was find this color right here, which is almost like a yellow and like a very like almost between a lime and a yellow and a very color. This is a matte in the Natasha Denona palette. However, in my collection, I don't have that color. Just in order to see the color, I used this color even though it's a metallic. And it does give me an idea of what the color is going to look like just so I can see it. And to be honest, a couple of colors right here, it just really works well together and it could create some pretty fun green lids. I don't think that these neon-y greens are my favorite, but it's okay because if we keep on going, I'll talk to you guys a little bit of why it changes my mind a little bit as we keep going. So the next one, what I did was actually, this was weird. I could not find this tone. I was like, do I not have this? But finally inside of the mauve, I realized that if I blended the first two shades together, I kind of came up with a very similar tone. What's so interesting about the way that she created this color story and why I started getting more intrigued by it, how vibrant certain colors were and then how muted other colors were, but they were all very colorful colors and it's very unique and I don't know, I just honestly, it got me like, huh, as I started seeing this, I love this muted lavender shade. I actually would never have even in my wildest dreams thought that this muted lavender shade next to greens would actually make a very pretty look. And as I look at it, I kind of think, you know, I wouldn't mind using this very paled out lavender shade and deepening out my outer edge with this green. And I honestly think that that might be beautiful. So then the next one is a purple. So now this one, I just think it's going to be a typical deepening purple. What I did was, just to not go too crazy, I just went into pumpkin spice and I grabbed this color right here. It's called Spice of Life. It's a color I use a lot when I have to get purples. I feel like people usually use this type of deepening purple. Like I've said a lot, every time I see this type of tone of purple, I like that it's a matte. I think that that works really well. This deep purple though with these lime colors, not my favorite color combination on the lid. I feel like if you try to deepen out with this and you try to put a lime with it, you're gonna go a little woof, it's gonna be a little too much. So this purple literally is more to stay on this section more than it is to go to this section. So that one definitely, I would stay down here. I definitely wouldn't go up here. So the next one is going to be another one of her cool shades. So this is the multi-chromes. This is the interesting formula that she's introducing. And what I did was I jumped into Celestial Divinity just to kind of get an idea of the tone. Jumped into this color right here. This is going to give me like a very nice metallic-y purple shade. It looks similar to what the swatch looks like. And like I said, we don't know what the final color is going to look like because this is going to be a shifting shade. I do like that it's a purple. It is different. It is going to go really nice with even like this little section right here. Definitely would not be using it up here, at least not from what I see, unless it has a green shift to it, but I don't think it would. So the next one is actually another one that I was like, okay, so this is interesting again. It went back to kind of how I said with the Mauve Obsessions, that it did like this really cool, like muted down version of these really fun colors. She did it again with the purples by including this type of tone right here. I found it inside of my Iconic New York collection from Laura Geller, and it looks like this. When you swatch it, it goes on a lot lighter, and it's like a muted down purple. Almost like in between a gray and a purple. What a pretty tone. This tone is very gorgeous, and I don't see this ever. And this is one of the only palettes that I have that has something similar to what I'm seeing in these swatches. And I love that color, and I love the color in this palette, but I don't love this formula as much as Natasha's formula. I like that color though. Now, this is another little section right here that would work really well together. You've got the very muted down color, you've got this multi-chrome, you also have a deepening shade, but I feel from what I'm seeing in the swatches, these are not going to be like very purple lids. It's gonna have a little bit of mutedness to it, which can be a very nice, very easy to use look. I think your more difficult to use is going to be a little bit around here when you're trying to play with those lime colors. So now if we keep on going, so the next one, what I did was I stayed in Celestial Divinity because I remember that her matte formula, this one right here, when you swatch it, it looks like it's going to be a little bit more magenta, but when you put it on, it loses a little bit and it goes a little bit more mauve. It reminds me of the Natasha Denona color that she swatched. This one is going to be one that I'm not sure how much pink is going to be in the new palette, if it's going to go deeper or it's going to go pinker. I'm hoping it goes deeper, and I'm hoping it stays away from the fuchsia-y kind of colors. I believe it is. I believe it's going to be more like this, and it's going to be a little bit more mauve. I think that's going to match a lot better with what we've got going on here. Actually, even in this section here, if you just use this type of shade with these deepening shades over here, you can completely do a different look. Like, it's like completely different. The next one I went into, this one right here from Laura Geller again, and I just grabbed this shade right here. It's kind of like a light creamy white. This reminds me of what I'm seeing from her swatch. Now, I always say about Natasha Denona's images, sometimes they could be a tad deeper than you actually see them in person. So I'm going by these swatches and crossing my fingers that they're accurate, but I feel like the last time I did, they were pretty accurate with the Glam palette. So I'm going to say it's going to be like that. It's going to be a creamy white, but I feel like it's going to have a little bit of mutedness to it, which I like about this palette. It's kind of like playing on the fun colors, but then they muted down some other ones. Very interesting. So the next one, what I did was I jumped into Pumpkin Spice to get myself an orange. Now, this is one that I just grabbed this one because in the Pumpkin Spice has a tad of a yellow undertone to it, so it doesn't look as orangey like pumpkin orange with a little pizzazz in it, and I feel like that's what this is going to be. This is going to be like an orangey tone with a little pizzazz in it. It's probably not going to be spot on to this pumpkin spice color, but it's going to be pretty close, and I feel like once it's blended and everything, we're going to have a very similar effect. I like this. Now, I like this too because I like this color right here with like these mauve tones right here. I also think this color mixed with some of these purples is cool. This color underneath the deep green actually would probably look good too, depending on how deep of an orange it is. It has to be a little lighter of an orange to go good with the green, but I feel like it's going to be. I am thoroughly impressed by the color combinations in here as of right now. So the next one, what I did was I jumped into Celestial Divinity. This is the third and last one that's going to be kind of like a multi-chrome. I just jumped into this color right here. It is one of the ones that shifts inside of her palette. Actually, if you look at it in certain angles, it actually looks pink, but depending on how you look, it kind of like shifts blue. So that's kind of like what we're talking about here. It depends on how you look at it. Right now it looks blue, but it's actually a pink color. So when you swatch it, it looks a little bit more like a pink. So this one's going to be one that, you know, it may look a little pink and then it might actually shift to a different tone. I feel like it's going to be like one of those that are shifts into like a purpley shade, kind of like that same idea to kind of go with these up here. She didn't really say exactly what colors it's going to shift into yet, but just to kind of get like an idea of the color story, it definitely is going to have a pink look to it, but then it's going to shift different colors. And then the last two. Here we go again, very cool. She kind of muted things down a little bit and gave us some really nice blending shades. I Love You a Latte, this color right here in Pumpkin Spice, reminds me a lot of the tone that she included. This is a really nice blending shade, and if you guys see it even here, right on top of this really nice green, you can see how those two tones even together can create a really nice look. This color right here is gonna go good with almost every single one of these shades. Of course, the limes where you're gonna have the harder time. Limes are a little bit more difficult to use, but you have a really nice transitional shade here and something very easy to apply. And then finally, the last one, I also jumped into Pumpkin Spice, and this color a la mode is also another color that looks very similar. It's a lighter version of the one you just saw before, but it's gonna have a little bit more pink in it. And I feel like this is gonna be more like your transitional shade, your blending shade, something that you're going to use to kind of like blend out some of the other shadows and use it that way. So overall, that kind of makes up this palette. Now, I'm going to tell you guys, like I said, when I first saw this in the promo images, I kind of just went like, I don't know if I like this. Oh no, what does she do? And then when I saw the actual palette, I kind of did the same thing. This to me seems like one of those releases that you have to kind of like swatch it out and really look at it and really analyze it for a little bit, because it is very different. The colors are very different, and it's more of like an editorial fun palette than it is one of those palettes that you would pull out to wear to, let's say, work. So where I think that this palette really succeeded was when I told you guys, when I talked about the color story of the Celestial Divinity, I said for this type of palette, it's like one that you would have to put out, but you would want to bring in other colors for it, because otherwise a lot of your matte shades are very pink and a lot of your looks are going to end up like pink based. Where she kind of like did something interesting is I feel like the mattes that she included in here really are going to be able to change up these looks. It's not going to be like one of those palettes that you're going to put out and feel like you need to grab into another one, at least not based off of the looks that I can see from here. You are going to have very fun looks. So if you want to do something a little bit more dyed down, you might have to bring in like a matte brown or something like that if you're not into this type of fun colors, but you want to have color. But I will say, the way that I'm looking at this color story, I do feel like she actually created something that you can do a bunch of different looks with a bunch of different color families, not really have to bring in another palette. Like I said, for me personally, I feel like the only things that are really missing here are something like a deeper brown, because I just always feel, to me, I love to have a brown inside of palettes. I really feel like a lot of looks sometimes look really good when you smoke out edges with browns. But that being said, and you guys knowing that have followed my channel, you guys know that I'm not somebody who dyes over color or thinks like, oh my goodness, it's the most amazing thing because it has so much color. I tend to pick certain types of color stories that I enjoy. I just honestly, when I saw this swatched out of my arm, I feel like this is something that I'm going to make up my mind right now and say, I'm gonna pick this up. Now, I understand why this is limited edition, because I do not believe that this is going to be for everybody. And I'm gonna tell you guys right now, if you guys do not like these colors, if you're looking at them and you're saying, oh my goodness, I can see where she's coming from, I can make some fun looks with them, but if those looks don't go into your daily lives, skip this palette, because honestly, it's an expensive palette. It has a really nice formula, but if you don't use these colors, I mean, it's not worth it for you. It really is not. When it comes to me personally, the reason that it would be more worth it for somebody like me is because I do Instagrams tutorials, I do editorial type of looks, and I like to really play with color sometimes. So for me to make up my mind and say I would need something like this, and I love Natasha Denona's formula, makes a lot of sense for my life. But if you look at this and you say, I really never use those colors, I hate the way lime looks on my lids, I don't think that I would ever put purple with orange, then I think you kind of answered your own question on whether you like this. I will say, Natasha Denona's formula is one of my favorites ever. I feel like you get a lot for what you pay for, not just talking about the packaging, which I think she does a pretty good job with packaging, and not just the formula, but the thought process of curating something like this, that it looks like there was thought here. I feel like this was something that was planned out. Is it different? Yes, but do we like that? I do. So if you guys like this palette, and if it's available already, everything is going to be linked down below. And since I'm making up my mind and picking it up, that means that you guys will be seeing a review on it. And of course, I'll show you guys how the swatches matched up to the real palette. So thank you guys so much for watching. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And I'm sure there will be another Make Up Your Mind next week, because I've already swatched out a few other palettes. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.